What's good, YouTube? Welcome back. Today it is a LazyDaze channel and we're back at it again doing some more history reaction for you guys today, and it is some more Kings and Generals content for you, and it is War of the Roses Part 2, Battle of Barnet. Don't know the second one. 1471. I'm really looking forward to finding out what we have in store in this episode today. This looks like it's going to be a really good series. I'm looking forward to it in general, and just looking forward to finding out some more about some English history as well. So if you have any more suggestions, drop them in the comments box down below. If you haven't already, head over to Kings and Generals channel. A link's in the description box down below. They make some amazing content. If you're looking to get some more content, then I also have a solo channel. If you just look at this bar here, you will see it, so you can head over there and get more content. If you're looking forward to our content and you're enjoying it, then like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell. But we are going to jump straight into this one.
Let's do this.
The first phase of the Wars of the Roses concluded with the Battle of Towton and the ascension of Edward IV of the House of York to the English throne.
Okay.
Yet his Lancastrian enemies still had supporters and allies, and the power of the nobles was not curbed. Intrigue and backstabbing would change the situation many times before the second part of the Wars of the Roses peaked at the battles of Barnet and Tewkesbury. But before we jump to the video, allow us to thank our sponsor, the new mobile strategy game Gods and Glory, which is exactly what 1,500 crystals and a starter pack with EXP boost and resources. After the decisive victory at Towton in 1461, Edward IV returned to London for his coronation, while Henry VI, alongside his wife Margaret and son Edward, fled to Scotland. The Lancastrian party still controlled part of Northumberland, and Edward left Richard of Warwick, aptly named the Kingmaker for his role in the rise of the Yorks, to deal with the last remnants of the resistance. By 1463, Warwick retook all of the castles belonging to the Lancastrian nobles and returned to the south. As Edward's position was strong, he decided to forgive some of his past enemies, among them Henry Somerset and Ralph Percy.
Interesting.
King Edward was wary that the Scots supported the Lancasters throughout the first phase of the war. So in 1463, he asked James III to sign a treaty. The Scots agreed and sent their diplomats to York in 1464. To prevent the agreement from happening, Lancastrian nobles, nudged by Queen Margaret, rebelled in 1464 under the leadership of Somerset and Percy in Northumberland. Edward sent a force led by Warwick's brother John Neville to the north, and in May he defeated Somerset at Hexham. All Lancastrian leaders were killed, which ended the rebellion for good. The treaty with the Scots was signed, and Queen Margaret and Prince Edward escaped to France to their relative King Louis XI.
So they legged it.
In 1465, Henry VI was captured in Lancashire and brought to London, which ushered in a short period of peace in England. During this time, Richard Warwick became even more powerful, assuming many offices and taking lands from the Lancastrians.
Oh, that's going to pee people off.
He tried to assert influence over the young king, and he saw negotiations with Louis in 1466 as one of the ways to do it. Warwick tried to marry Edward with the daughter of the French king, Anne, and this is when a secret came out. The king had privately married Elizabeth Woodville in 1464, and the fact that she was from the lower nobility shocked the magnates. On top of that, Edward entered a secret alliance with the Duke of Burgundy, Charles the Bold, negating Warwick's negotiations.
Going, I'm a king. I'll do what I want to do. Yeah.
Louis, and embarrassing him.
God.
Warwick left the court in 1467 and started plotting against the king. In 1469, one of his captains started a rebellion in the north. Edward moved to Nottingham in the early days of July, but upon learning that the rebels outnumbered him, decided to wait for reinforcements.
Okay.
However, Warwick entered London a few days after and declared for the rebels alongside his son-in-law, the king's brother, George. The rebels managed to bypass Nottingham and attacked the royal reinforcements at a place called Edgecote Moor.
Oh no.
Supported by Warwick's troops, the rebels routed the forces of the king. Edward was captured on his way back to London. Warwick's attempt to rule in the king's name, or even dethrone him, failed, as Edward was still very popular among the nobility and the commoners. Rebellions forced Warwick to release the king, and he ended up with even less influence over governance than before. So Warwick decided.
Imagine planning a rebellion, doing well, capturing the king, and it's still not working out. You've done everything right. You should have been able to change history there and then, but you couldn't, because you couldn't get the support of the peasants.
Sucks, doesn't it? It's just, you've done everything to a T.
Yeah, literally.
And life just goes, bend over.
Literally.
Not happening.
Not today, sunshine. Not today.
Oh, mate.
Decided to instigate another rebellion in Lincolnshire in March of 1470. This time the king moved swiftly, not allowing the rebels to connect with Warwick.
Okay.
Smart.
At Losecoat Field, Edward's outnumbered army defeated and routed the rebels.
Ooh.
This forced Warwick to flee to France, where Louis reconciled him with Queen Margaret. Kingmaker was going to restore Henry VI, who by now wasn't in possession of his faculties, to the English throne using French support. In September, Warwick landed in Devon. Initially, Edward was planning to march against him, but Warwick's brother John, who had remained loyal to the king until now, finally rebelled, and Edward had no other choice but to leave England. In October, Warwick entered London and restored Henry to the throne.
Okay, this time it's worked, I think.
Meanwhile, Edward found refuge in Flanders, which was under the control of Charles the Brave. Although the help he received from Burgundy was minimal, Edward returned to England in March of 1471. Edward used deceit, stating that he was not vying for the throne and had come back to reclaim the Duchy of York. The city of York allowed him to enter, and soon he started his march towards London, receiving reinforcements along the way. Even his disloyal brother George rejoined him.
Yeah, I don't know if I trust that.
It seems that Warwick was waiting for aid from his allies in England and France, so he avoided battle, as it was expected that Edmund Somerset would defend the capital. However, the Londoners preferred Edward, and Somerset was forced to leave, either to avoid rebellion or to unite with Margaret, who was going to land in Dorset. Edward took control of the city and captured Henry VI yet again.
This guy's not having fun, is he?
Edward had between 10 and 15,000 men, and was outnumbered by Warwick's army, which had more than 20,000. But he knew that he needed to attack before more reinforcements could join his enemy from the south. Warwick was probably hoping to block the road to the north, as on the 12th of April his troops took a position to the north of London at a place called Barnet. The Yorkist army arrived on the evening of the 13th, and Edward positioned his troops in the dark, planning to take his stand at dawn. It is said that Edward made a mistake in the dark, underestimating the distance between the two armies, and moved his troops closer to those of Warwick than he had intended. This, however, proved fortunate, as the Lancastrians, who were using their artillery to weaken their enemy, were overshooting Edward's troops, who moved through most of the night to take up positions.
Nice.
Okay.
He deployed Hastings on the left, and his brother Richard, Duke of Gloucester, aged 18 at the time, on the right, while George was to stay with him in the centre. A small reserve was stationed behind the main line. Opposite them, Warwick and his brother John Neville commanded the centre, with Exeter on the left side and Oxford on the right. The Lancastrian knights were dismounted, as that usually showed that they weren't going to retreat and would fight among the commoners until the very end.
Okay.
As the morning of April 14th dawned, a mist engulfed the battlefield. The armies failed to line up parallel to each other, with both ending up in a slight oblique formation in relation to the enemy. The Lancastrians had numbers, so this at first worked to their advantage. Oxford's unit attacked the flank of Edward's army. Hastings' troops were soon overwhelmed.
Oh no.
Many of them died during the retreat, while the remainder
shit.
fled all the way to London, claiming
God.
that Edward had already lost the battle. Unfortunately for Warwick, a big part of Oxford's unit remained detached from the battle, as they attempted to loot their fallen enemies, with only part of it returning to the fight. As visibility was still poor, neither side knew about these events.
Wow, really?
Meanwhile,
dear.
Gloucester repeated Oxford's manoeuvre, attacking the Lancastrian left and pushing Exeter's troops back. This shifted the lines yet again. Warwick, aware of this, ordered his reserves to support Exeter and restore the formation, while his forces moved against the enemy's centre, and the lines finally joined. It is said that the remainder of Oxford's troops returned to the battle at this point, and in the mist ended up behind the reserves commanded by John Neville, which were sent to support Exeter. Apparently, Oxford's coat of arms with stars on it was mistaken for Edward's banner with the sun on it. The panicked forces of Neville turned towards Oxford's troops and unleashed their bows, killing many of their comrades. As backstabbing was so common during this period, Oxford and his men cried treason and started retreating to the north. This cry resonated across the Lancastrian line, which ended up in disarray.
Oh dear.
At this point, the fog started to dissipate, and Edward, seeing his enemies panicked, sent in his reserves to move across the right side and attack the Lancastrians from the flank and rear. Soon Warwick and Neville were killed, while Exeter was captured. Between 5,000 and 10,000 Lancastrians were dead, while the Yorkists lost less than 1,000.
Wow.
Unfortunately for Edward, while this battle was raging, Queen Margaret and her son, Prince Edward, landed in Dorset and were greeted by Somerset. Edward dismissed most of his troops and returned to London, then learned about the arrival of Margaret 2 days later. The Queen knew about the death of Warwick at Barnet, so she decided to move towards Wales with her 6,000-strong army to connect with one of her supporters, Jasper Tudor. A few of her units were sent to the east to deceive Edward, but the king was not fooled and moved swiftly to the west with his remaining 5,000.
5,000
By the
versus
time Margaret
6,000.
reached Bristol on the 30th of April, Edward was at Cirencester, some 60 kilometres to the northeast. He attempted to block the Lancastrian route to the north, but was outmanoeuvred. It was becoming clear that Margaret was trying to move across the River Severn to reach Wales, so Edward sent a message to the governor of Gloucester, the city which controlled the nearest crossing, ordering him not to let Margaret pass. The Lancastrian army had no other choice but to move to the north and cross near Tewkesbury. However, Edward was moving as swiftly as usual, and his speed made it impossible for the Lancastrians to cross the bridge. On the 4th of May, they were forced to fight him at Tewkesbury. The battlefield was full of small woods, hedges and marshes, which was favourable for the Lancastrians, who assumed a defensive position, dividing their army into 3 equal parts. Their left and rear were protected by a river, while the centre was positioned on a hill. Similarly, Edward divided his troops into 3 groups, but a small cavalry ambush was placed in the woods to the extreme left. The Yorkists also had a decided advantage in artillery, as the army of the Queen was forced to abandon its cannons during the march. The battle started with a Yorkist advance supported by artillery volleys, but as the terrain was broken, it was impossible for Edward to move in a coherent line.
Oh no.
Somerset attempted
How's he
to
going to get out of
use
this,
the
Joe?
divide in the enemy forces
I
and
think he's just gonna
attacked
get
the unit
routed.
commanded by Edward. Initially, this charge
Oh, no, he's
surprised
got
the
the
king and
cavalry
his troops,
In
and they
the
were
forest
pushed
just
back.
behind there.
However, the charging Lancastrians ended up with the ambushing horsemen to their rear, and a charge routed them.
Yeah,
Most of this
nice
unit
call, Jack.
was cut down. According to the legend, Somerset managed to return to his main line and killed the commander of the centre, who failed to support him. It was clear that the Lancastrians had lost, and their retreat ended up in a massacre. Most of the Lancastrian commanders, among them Somerset and Prince Edward, were executed, while Margaret was taken captive.
Jesus.
Edward IV won 2 impressive battles in a short span, but the war was hardly over, as Lancastrian allies were lurking nearby. Our
Still
series
more to
on
come.
the Wars of the Roses will be concluded in the near future, so make
sure.
sure you are
I
subscribed
want to see
to
what
our
happens with
channel
James
and
Tudor.
have pressed the
Yeah.
She was on the way there.
Yeah.
Ain't any more, love.
No, definitely not. I am looking forward to finding out some more about this. This
Yeah,
is a
man.
good series.
That
I'm
is-
really,
this is
really
really
enjoying it. If you haven't already, head over to their page. The link's in the description box down below. If you guys are enjoying our reactions and looking forward to more, then like, comment, subscribe,
Subscribe.
hit that notification bell. But we will catch you in the next video.
See you in a bit.